I've always believed that photography is one of those things where you never really stop learning. No matter how long you've been at it, there's always something new to pick up or an old skill to refine. In today's video, I'm going to share my experience of attending a dedicated professional photography workshop and why I would recommend that you do the same if you're looking to sharpen your skills or to get that extra motivation boost. Now, I've recently returned from a self-drive wildlife photo tour of the Kruger National Park, and in the videos that I posted from this trip, I extolled the virtues of a self-drive versus a dedicated photography tour. So why am I now suggesting that a photo workshop is a good idea? A couple of reasons. I'm moving back to the UK in a few months after 15 years here in South Africa, and I'll be spending 2026 across the many and varied landscapes of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. I've not done much landscape work recently, so I want to get back into the mindset because it's very different to wildlife and bird photography. I've dabbled a bit recently and I spent a few days in the Drakensberg Mountains in July, and that's one of the best locations in the entirety of Southern Africa for landscape photography. It's got everything: rugged mountain ranges, wide vistas, gorges, waterfalls, the lot. And it was on that trip that I learned two things. Number one, my landscape skills are not where I want them to be. Now, don't misunderstand me, I got some shots that I'm proud of. In fact, I got a couple of shots that I've printed, but it wasn't natural. It took a lot of trial and error, and I know that I left a lot of stunning images in the field. Secondly, there isn't much in the way of landscape photography in the area that I live in, Johannesburg in Gauteng, and the trip to Drakensberg taught me that local knowledge is king. So I wanted to visit a new area of South Africa, and I wanted somebody with me that knew the area inside out to ensure I made the most of my time. And that's why I decided to attend a 4-day landscape photography workshop down in the Overberg region of South Africa. It was run by Venture KJ, with John and Kyle leading the group, and this is not a review of Venture KJ. I'll drop a link in the description for those of you interested, but this video is more about my overall experience and thoughts on attending workshops in general rather than their specific offering. Now, of course, the experience will be different depending on who runs them, and I have to say it was fantastic. So I would recommend Venture KJ, but I'm not going to talk about accommodation, food, etc. It's more the macro experience, not just what we did, but why I think attending a workshop like this is a good idea for anyone that's passionate about photography. Now, when you think of attending a workshop, you're likely to be in one of two camps. Either the idea really excites you, spending a few days with like-minded people, people passionate about photography, sharing your views over a glass of wine in the evening, discussing compositions during the early dawn light, and debating the best ND filters over lunch. For others, being in a new area with a group of 8 or 10 people that you've never met before may fill you with dread. What if they're not my kind of people? What if I'm not their kind of people? What if they're kit junkies, or worse, kit snobs? How do I fill the silence if it envelops every conversation that I'm in? Now, let me admit something about myself. I am not the most outgoing person, especially in new groups, and I sit more in the second camp than I do in the first. Some people might even say I'm a bit antisocial, but suffice to say, walking into a room full of strangers, especially when I know I'm stuck for days in a row, is just not in my comfort zone at all. But sometimes pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is exactly where the good stuff happens, right? So picture this. There's 10 of us in total. including the two pros, John and Kyle, and it's a really diverse group. Different backgrounds, different levels of photography experience, but everyone there was there for the same reason: to shoot, to learn, and to spend time immersed in landscape photography. And you know what? Even though most of the people knew each other, having attended multiple workshops with Venture KJ before, the group turned out to be really welcoming. I have to be honest, and I can't say that I didn't feel uncomfortable at times, but that's about me. It's about my social awkwardness, not about the people I was with. Ultimately, I didn't feel like an outsider, but critically, for me at least, I also didn't feel the need to talk constantly either. The structure of the workshop was fairly low intensity in the best way possible. Every morning we were up early, long before the sun came up, chasing that first light. And those mornings were spent in the rocky coast, just a short drive from a town called Arniston. There's some pretty iconic locations here, and I'll show you some shots, especially the cauldron, a bowl in the rock that captures the incoming swell of the sea and then spews it in a white froth across the rocks. Again, that local knowledge is key. Understanding the tides and the conditions meant that we were able to clamber down the cliffs and get onto the level with the cauldron bowl. Without guidance, it would have seemed a bit of a risk, especially alone, and I don't think I would have done it. Right next to the cauldron is the shaft, an outcrop of rock jutting out into the sea and pointing out towards the sun as it rises on the horizon. It was fantastic photographing these scenes. You know how it is. The quiet of the early hours of the morning, the anticipation as the sky starts to change colour, and then those fleeting moments where the light is just perfect. And that alone is worth the effort. In the afternoons, we'd head out again, this time inland, chasing clouds, finding compositions, and working with whatever the landscape offered. The Overberg area itself is an absolute treat. I mean, there's rolling fields filled with bright yellow rapeseed, or as they call it in South Africa, canola seed. These classic South African windmills were dotting the horizon and the skies. The skies are just fantastic, big, open, and they seem to change constantly. It's a region that really has everything you could want for landscape work. From the intimacy of little details to the grandeur of those wide open vistas. In between the morning shoot and the evening shoot was pretty much time at our own disposal. On two of the days there were talks, one on editing and one on long exposure techniques, which is really important for those seascapes. But other than that, we had time to ourselves to take a walk, read a book, catch up on sleep. I used the time to organise and start editing a few images. And then there's the learning side of things. Having two professionals, John and Kyle in this case, right there with us, guiding, sharing insights, critiquing when needed, makes such a huge difference. You know, they weren't overbearing. They weren't telling us this is how you must do it. It was much more about encouragement, suggestions, and sometimes just asking the right questions to make you think about what you were doing. I mean, John asked me on one occasion, what is it that you're trying to achieve with that composition? He'd seen me set up slightly aside from the rest of the group. What are you trying to achieve with that composition? It was a simple question, but it was a great question because it reminded me that a good view does not always make a good photograph. And after some thought, I moved a few foot to one side, raised my shooting angle, and it made a much, much better image. Having somebody to point out an angle or an approach you might not have considered is, by definition, impossible to get when you're shooting on your own. One of the biggest things for me from the whole trip was that understanding of long exposure techniques. I dabbled in it before and I've used filters a few times, but having the chance to really focus on it day after day, morning after morning, in slightly different settings, with that expert guidance if you needed it, just filled me with much more confidence. You know, it's one thing to read about those techniques, and you should, and it's another thing to watch videos about these things, and you should, but it's completely different to stand there, tripod on the rocks, waves around your ankles, and work through it in real time. On top of this, that in the moment feedback, those more formal learning sessions in the form of presentations and lectures on the editing and the long exposure techniques, that combination of formal and informal learning is really at the heart of why I think workshops like this are so valuable. Ultimately, if I summarize it, it's a combination of four things. Number one, being in a beautiful, inspiring location is always good. Local knowledge of that fantastic location will help you make the most of it. Professional guidance and mentorship, and being part of a community of like-minded photographers for a few days, even for an antisocial bugger like me. I have to say, it was this that surprised me the most, the extent to which I actually enjoyed the group dynamic. Like I said earlier, I usually keep to myself in situations like this, but there's something about sharing a sunrise shoot with people who get it. Those who understand why you're clambering down rocky cliff faces in the dark with a head torch, or standing ankle deep in cold seawater waiting for the light to break, or why you're obsessing over whether the shutter speed should be 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Is it a 3-stop ND filter or a 6-stop ND filter? There's a camaraderie that builds really quickly, and it just makes the whole experience richer. At least it did for me. Each of those four things on their own makes it worthwhile, but together they create something that's just greater than the sum of its parts. I would really have liked to have shared some footage from the experience with you guys, but I just didn't think it was appropriate. This was a Venture KJ workshop. It was John and Kyle's. It was their event to showcase if they wanted to, and they both have their own channels. I didn't feel it was right to be pointing a camera at everything for my own channel. So instead, I've shared some of the images I captured during the workshop throughout this video, and I'll put some more at the end of the video. I hope these give a sense of the photographic opportunities and the fantastic nature of the location I was at. The benefits that I took from the workshop certainly ticked my objectives and more. I think when we shoot alone, it's easy to fall into patterns, the same kind of compositions, the same techniques, same comfort zones. A workshop shakes that up. You know, I was watching to see how other people approach the same scene. I got ideas that I wouldn't have thought of, and I came away refreshed and, honestly, inspired. Another real benefit I noticed was the way the workshop forced me to slow down and really focus. In our day-to-day lives, it's so easy to rush through a shoot, to grab a few frames and then move on. But here, with the structure of the workshop and the encouragement from John and Carl, I found myself being more deliberate, taking the time to refine, to wait, to experiment. And that's a lesson I'll definitely carry back into my day-to-day photography going forward. If I were to sum it up, I'd say this. Attending a photography workshop is an investment in yourself, in your photography. It's not just learning about a few new tricks with your camera. It's about deepening your connection to the art of photography, opening yourself up to new perspectives and coming away with both images and experiences that will stay with you. So, if you've ever considered joining a workshop but held back, maybe because of perceived value or time or even just nerves about being in a group of new people, I'd encourage you to go for it. For me, stepping outside of my comfort zone was definitely worth it. And who knows, if you're an outgoing social person, you may well come away with newfound friends too. Thanks for watching. I hope this has given you some food for thought about your own photography journey. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your experiences if you've ever attended a workshop. Drop me a note in the comment section below, and I read every single one of them and I respond to as many as I possibly can. I'll leave you with a few more images from the trip, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. In the meantime, please take care. Bye bye.